Good evening, and let us pray. Eternal God and everlasting Father, with grateful hearts we come before you tonight. We want to thank you, first of all, for waking us up this morning in our right mind, and you have clothed us in our right image. And mighty God, you protected us throughout this day. And because of that, we say thank you. And so now, Lord, we are here this evening to come together because you admonish us in your word. Behold, how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. So, mighty God, we bring these candidates before you, and we ask that you will give them the knowledge, the wisdom, then the understanding that they need, Lord God, that they will lead your people in the way we ought to be led. Father, we pray that you will bridle their tongue and gird their loins, Lord God, that they will be who they are and what they say they are. Lord God, I pray that we will have understanding at the end of this evening here this evening. We thank you for every question that will be asked, Lord God, that you will be the one, Lord God, to give them what it takes to answer this question truthfully and honestly. We thank you again for the Smith Bay community and this building. Thank you for the ownership. And oh God, we pray that as we go forward this evening, that you will bless everything that will be said and done in no other name but in Jesus' name. Everybody say amen. 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 God bless you.
Again, this is our first meet and greet. We have 3 more meet and greets we're going to do in this area, in the same place here. And I think it's important for us to meet the candidates, hear the issues, especially now we've been through 2 Cat 5s. We are back to rebound to get back to where we were. So we want to hear some of the issues the candidates have to offer. So again, we want to be respectful. We want to hear what they have to say. And again, anyone have a question, there's a sign-in sheet. There's a sheet going to be passed around. You put your question on that and raise your hand and someone will pick it up. And of course, those questions will be asked. Okay? At this time, I want to briefly bring my Vice President, Mr. Samri, to say a few words because we don't want to keep this thing, dragging. We want to have a fast event. We want to be out there by 9:30. So again, Sam, by 9:30, it's 9:30. 10 o'clock? Yeah. So we're going to try for 9:30.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Sunday Lounge here, and we're happy to have you here. I want to give a hail up to our president. Give him a hand, please. Also to our secretary back there. Where is she? I want to say, how you doing? And then our coordinator and also the one who will be facilitating the questions this evening. We're looking forward to that happening this evening. And I want to say welcome to all those who are here from the senatorial individuals, from the senators. I see a few of them who are here. We welcome you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate having you here. Give them a hand, please. And before I close, I want to say a big hail up to Captain Colborn, Sandra Colborn. Captain Colborn has been, thank you. And let me say why I said Captain Colborn has been the most supportive individual for the Smith Bay Community Action Foundation. She comes to 3 times as much meetings as me. I have not been showing up to the meetings, but I've been here for support. But I want to welcome all of you and thank you for your patience with the parking and the property. We're going to try to see what we can do about that, but for now, this is what we have. God bless you. And for you candidates, we wish you the best. God bless you. Y'all looking good up there, all of you. So we're going to have a good evening, and thank you. At this time, we'd like to turn it over to our coordinator.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for attending this evening. As Roy said, it is our first one, so we're very excited about it. And if anyone that knows me and that has worked with me, especially my friend right here, I don't play when it comes to time. We're out of here by 9 o'clock, okay? The event is finished at 9 o'clock. 9 to 9:30, we're cleaning up. So I'm just letting you know how the time frame is going to go. So once I take my place, I am going to turn it over to the candidates. Each candidate will have 15 minutes to present their platform. Now, their team is up here, some of them, but one could not make it, so that's understandable. So Please give her our best. Okay. So, as I said, I'm going to turn it over so we can get right started. Each candidate will have 15 minutes to present their platform. Afterwards, we will open up for a question and answer. By the time I start this, question and answers are closed. I will not be collecting any more questions. Now, we only have a short time frame, so I'm trying to get in as many questions as possible. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, okay? We're going to start right now with Team 1.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. So, my name is Bryan, and I'm a Virgin Islander. I'm not a Virgin Islander because I was raised in Saban, or I used to live in Hidden Valley, or I had a house in Bavoni, or I lived in Wim. I'm a Virgin Islander because I love this Virgin Islands, just like you. I'm a Virgin Islander because I've invested my time and my hard-earned money, my education, my kids. I've invested it in the Virgin Islands because this is a place that I care about, just like you. I grew up right across the street from here in Smith Bay. You know, one thing about being in Smith Bay or being in the Virgin Islands is I had the privilege of living on both districts. So I'm a Crucionian or a Crucianero, if you want to say my Sabanero roots. My grandfather was Sapi Pilgrim, and my uncles and my aunts, my mother, they all grew up in Smith Bay between here and Bunker Hill.
No, I think you're coming right.
And I remember when Smith Bay was just this sleepy place, my grandmother actually used to walk from here to Pilgrim Terrace every day to go tend to the bar and cook food. Yeah, right here in Smith Bay. And back then it was only a pool hall across the street, and we used to get chased out of there all the time. My grandfather Sapi had a big pen in the back where we used to chase the ducks them and climb the mango trees and fish with the turtles in the pond. That was a long time ago. And then in 10th grade, all of a sudden, we moved to St. Croix. You know, me and my 4 brothers, there are 5 of us, 5 boys, and I'm the smallest one, at least the lightest one. But the thing was, coming back to St. Thomas really showed me how the place had changed. And it changed in a lot of ways that I liked, and it changed a lot of ways that I didn't like. Moving to St. Croix helped me understand Crucians and what they were about. And that was a blessing because we Virgin Islanders are so different. And there's no reason why we should be alike. It allowed me to see people that came from everywhere, including my running mate Tregenza, who came from St. Kitts, from America, the Eastern Caribbean. I made friends all across the Eastern Caribbean and the Northern Caribbean. People just like me trying to make a life. My father was looking for opportunity. He grew up next to Jude Graveyard in Savannah, and slowly but surely he got his feet. When he graduated from high school, it was a quarter hour. Nobody even asked for a quarter no more. A quarter hour working in First Bank till he worked his way up to a vice president. Because back then we had opportunity in the Virgin Islands. Nobody was leaving and going to the States in droves because there was a promise here. We had home ownership. We had development. We were breaking ground on a new airport that would carve a way for a new future for the Virgin Islands. We're back in that place again. We have started over. Because it cannot be a coincidence that 100 years after we were turned over from the Danish rule to American rule, that we had 2 Category 5 storms that wiped us out. Can somebody say God is trying to tell you something? He's trying to tell you to change course now. That's right. Because we're on the wrong course in the Virgin Islands. We have the same people going in, saying the same things and doing the same things all the time, over and over again. In 2018, we still have not caught up to the millennium. We are still caught in a cycle and a government that has a system that was used by the Navy 50 years ago. People are still looking for the commissioners to guide their every single movement instead of getting together and collaborating across the board and figuring out the right solutions. When we get down in these meetings, it's only the policy makers and not the people that are making the decisions. I want to build a Virgin Islands for all of us, and that means every single one of us. Every one of us to be included. So when your child goes to school and they graduate, they're graduating with an education that will not frustrate them, but will energize them. When your child finishes college, they'll come back to a place that has a promise for them. they will be able to get home ownership and a house in St. Thomas, a piece of the rock like every Virgin Islanders before them. Along the way, somehow, some way, we forgot that this is about the people. People like you, people like me, people that care about what happens for the Virgin Islands. We have an opportunity now to rewrite the script, to really be prepared for a whole new generation and different things, to attract our young students back to the Virgin Islands, to open up our government offices and make them actually work for people, to be able to fix a retirement system that is broken and tired, to revamp a waste management system that has been defunct for years. This is our opportunity and we cannot waste it. Ladies and gentlemen, luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. I have prepared. I went to school and I got the education. I left my private sector job and joined the government to serve you, the people of the Virgin Islands, and understand that the problems of the Virgin Islands are rooted in a central government that is broken. And if you don't believe it's broken, you can go to any government service, whether it's DLCA, hospital, education. We're simply not delivering on the goods. And we're not delivering on the goods because we have not invested in our people. As young men, for some reason, somebody has convinced them that they all must dress in black and short pants and sit on the corner and complain about no opportunity. Who convinced them of that? Who could imagine that for 40 years in the future, we'd be looking at a place where the young men all want to dress alike? I subscribe to a uniform that makes them like deer in hunting season for the police. Killing one another by the droves. We need to change course now. And to change course, ladies and gentlemen, there's 4 things on my platform that we need to do. We need to stabilize the government and restore trust and transparency. Do you trust the government? No. I certainly don't. Change course now and come to our GRS plan. Is on here. It's on Thursday evening at Walkers by the Sea, and hear the Bryan Roach address for a new Virgin Islands GRS policy program. Change course now and understand that in this program there's a little piece for it for the retirees, for the vested and the non-vested. It is time for us to wake up and stabilize our government, to understand that our education system is purposeless. The only true reason for our education system is to produce self-sustaining adults, and if it's 12th grade ain't enough for them, then we have to give them more. We have to put a vocational school inside of St. Thomas that will allow for our students to graduate with a trade that is actually valuable. We have to change course now and realize that there must be purposefulness in every single thing that we do. We let developers come here from every single which way and tell us where things should be. We need a land and water use plan that we decide where the development is going to occur. We need to decide and have a purposeful government that decides that in 10 years or 20 years we're going to do tech, we're going to do tourism, and we're going to prepare the people to take those jobs. We were very good 30 years ago. We convinced our people that they should go to get their education and work for the government. Guess what? They all did. Now we have to raise a generation of entrepreneurs. Change course now. Once we stabilize the government, we need to go out there and recruit every single business and investment and every single grant that we can and put it to work in the Virgin Islands. Because our system will be fixed, people won't be frustrated investing their money. They'll feel confident that when we get their money, we're going to put it to work. We got 5 different type of tax incentive programs. We spend $1 million a year advertising them and $20 million a year spent getting tourists to come here. 40 people, 80 people pay 40% of all the Virgin Islands income tax. $126 million. There's something wrong with that, folks.
That's correct.
Something wrong with that. We need to change course now and realize that we have to start moving people from one economic class to the next. We have to take care of poverty, and we have to create a new private sector, not in the government, a new middle class in the private sector. That's right.
That's right.
We can't shrink government, but we can certainly grow private sector, and if we could triple the size, we can do it. Thirdly, once we get that investment here, we need to put our people to work. Put our people to work and give them an opportunity to pay some taxes because they're making so much money. They're happy to do it. We want to see Virgin Islanders smiling all the way to the IRB.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
And number 4, once we get our people to work, the government has to collect our taxes that are due. and reinvest them in our roads, in our hospital, in our education system. We are building a government of the past while the rest of the world is moving toward the future. People are talking about buildings and government consolidated centers when the real thing is no one wants to sit in a building anymore. Everybody wants to do everything on their phone. We need a governor that has vision for the future. A governor that understands that this Virgin Islands was created by a lot of different people from a lot of different places. And if you want to change course now, I'm ready to build a Virgin Islands for all of us. Thank you.
Let's give him one more hand, please. And you still have 1 minute to spare. Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Mr. Dawson, are you ready?
And thank you for the opportunity, and I must apologize for the rose not being amongst the thorns this evening due to a prearranged obligation on St. Croix that my running mate, Attorney Maurice James, could not be here this evening, but we do have a lovely picture of her and myself. So for those of you that haven't seen her, this is Maurice, and I'm so happy to hear that there will be other opportunities for Maurice to address this group. So thank you very much for your indulgence. I must say that this evening, I see a number of people wearing different t-shirts. So in some regards, we're partisans. But first of all, tonight, we are all Virgin Islanders. Okay? We're all proud Virgin Islanders. Now, Albert and I actually share a few things in common, other than having worked in the same administration, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. But I'm going to answer a few questions this evening, okay? And typically, I don't use any notes, but out of respect for the 15 minutes, I may be referring to my notes from time to time. I'm going to answer a couple of questions this evening. I'm going to answer, who am I? Because you should know who I am. I'm going to answer, who is Maurice? Because you should know who she is. I'm going to answer, why am I running? I'm going to answer, why am I and Maurice the best qualified from our perspective? I'm going to answer, what will we do? I'm going to answer, what will our future look like? And all of this in 15 minutes. I'm going to answer, what are we going to do specifically for the Smith Bay community? So let me get started. I was born to Angel Dawson and Alana Lewis in 1965. And my first house was the household of Virgin Island statesman Lionel Roberts at the foot of Government Hill, next to the Seventh-day Adventist Street. After my family moved from the bottom of Government Hill, we moved to the newly constructed Dunu housing community. And as time went by, I went and I lived with my aunt that helped to raise me, Miss Leona Roberts Benjamin, and her husband Leopold Benjamin, in Bonnes, France, in a house that was built by Albert's grandfather, Sappy Pilgrim, okay? But in between there, with regards to Smith Bay, I spent many summers with my stepfather's family. And my stepfather is Mr. Elvin Crabb, and his father was Julius Crabb, that lived right up the street here, across from Industrious. So I spent many summers. Albert said that he was in the duck pond or whatever pond it was. I was busy chasing iguanas and getting caught up in the kasha and the cactus in that area. But it was really an idyllic childhood. I really appreciated the Smith Bay community, and it is still a community that I hold very near and dear to my heart. So that is some of who I am in terms of my early childhood. In terms of my career, I am by career a banker. I started off with the Chase Manhattan Bank, where I was assistant treasurer. I was a vice president at Banco Popular and a senior vice president at First Bank as my most recent posting. But in between there, of course, I've also had government service. First as an assistant commissioner to the late, great Rudolph E. Quigger, and my friend Loretta Lloyd. I know that we had some great working relationships together. But that gave me a very good foundation for when I was invited by the 7th elected governor of the Virgin Islands to be his Commissioner of Finance. And when I became Commissioner of Finance, we were in meltdown, literally, in terms of the worldwide economy and the Virgin Islands economy. Let me tell you a little bit about who Maurice James is. Maurice James is an attorney by profession. She's the daughter of the late Randall James and Constance Espinosa of St. Croix. She just retired recently as the Judge Advocate General of the Virgin Islands National Guard. So with regards to the primary responsibility of the office of Lieutenant Governor, she is very well equipped for that. But we are a full and complete team, and Maurice, given her early interest in education and healthcare, will be responsible for overseeing some of the largest departments of this government: education, health, and human services, given her training and her background, in addition to banking and insurance. What have I done that makes me feel equipped to be Governor of the Virgin Islands? Albert referred to things in this government being broken, and the government itself being broken. And on that, he's absolutely correct. I feel in many regards that I am here this evening on a job interview, because we really are. And when you're in a job interview, it is fully appropriate for you as the employers to ask, well, what have you done in your past that qualifies you for the promotion that you're looking for? I have fixed broken things. I agree with Albert that many aspects of this government are broken. And what are some of the broken things that I fixed in the past? When I came in, the government of the Virgin Islands was years behind in the issuing of its audited financial statements. We brought them current. Loretta, you know how significant that is, okay? When I came in, the government was in free fall. 30% of its budget, general fund revenues, had evaporated due to the Great Recession. Yet we were able to manage without missing a payroll. We were able to achieve the best bond ratings that this government has ever had within a short period of time by working with our rating agencies and funding partners. We were able to get the district court to lift the injunction that had prevented this government from being able to issue its real property tax bills at the rate that it should be issued, which meant that many people were paying more in real property taxes, particularly in St. John, than they should have been paying. We were able to negotiate an agreement with the largest vendor of the VI lottery system that resulted in the government of the Virgin Islands receiving millions of dollars in tax revenues that it had not been receiving before. I worked with the Pension Reform Task Force that submitted legislation to the legislature for the fixing of the government employees' retirement system. And it sat there, and I'm not taking any digs at any senators. It is a fact that we are still talking about repairing the GERS. These are just some of the issues that we worked on and worked on successfully when I was Commissioner of Finance and Executive Director of the Public Finance Authority. Those things were broken, we fixed them. Now the government itself, we contend, is broken, and we will fix it. So why am I running? I'm running, and I quote a line from an old movie, it was called Network, where the protagonist in the movie opened up his window and encouraged everyone to open up their window and shout at the top of their lungs that I am as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it. And I am as mad as hell to have been sitting as Senior Vice President in First Bank, watching all of the progress that we had made when we were in the administration, and that would include Albert, because some fine work was done by his department as well. But I sat there upset that all of the progress that we had made was going down the tubes. And I was looking at what was happening in Puerto Rico and thinking that if we did not get a hold of it, that we were running out of runway in this territory and the territory would crash and burn. And I could remain comfortably in my seat at First Bank and allow that to happen. But as a proud Virgin Islander that feels well educated, well experienced, there is no way that I was going to allow that to happen. Moreover, I feel that I would run because I'm experienced in the areas that really, truly matter. If you were to do polling, as we have done, you will see that the number one and number two issues of concern of Virgin Islands voters, rightly so, are the economy and government fiscal matters. As a banker, my stock in trade is dealing with the economy and making credit decisions made based upon a sound understanding of the economy and what is required to grow the economy. With regards to government fiscal matters, bringing the government current with its audited financial statements, putting in place standard operating processes and procedures that are now being largely ignored and resulting in the regression to which I referred. But standard operating processes and procedures are critical. With regards to our relationship with the bond rating agencies, to go from a BBB+ rating, which is investment rating, to essentially junk status in less than 3 years, so that now we cannot borrow at any interest rate, is totally and thoroughly unacceptable and an indictment of this administration and this government. It is broken and we are going to fix it. And it is not sufficient just to have grand visions. You know, there's the old story that when you stand and you look at the lofty mountain in the distance, remember that you are standing on the grass. Okay? And we must remember that we are standing on the grass, and that to get to that lofty mountain, we need to take small incremental steps daily to get to that journey of 1,000 miles. So, what are some of the things that we have to do in terms of platform? Well, platform goes to having honest leadership and open government. That's critical. It goes to economic prosperity, which we will address through the 3 pillars of tourism, technology, and trade. And despite my trying to keep on track with my notes, I'm seeing that I have 3 minutes. So I would like to get to some of the specific areas of interest for the community of Smith Bay. Frankly, I think that we must do more with regards to beautifying this already beautiful place that is called Smith Bay. And all of the abandoned and derelict cars need to be addressed. And we need to plant trees on boats and shrubs on both sides of this road, from Cassie Hill to Red Hook. Roads, we must dedicate a portion of the real property taxes that the residents of this community pay specifically to taking care of their roads and putting up street signs so that people visiting can find you. Recreation, we must use the Community Facilities Trust that was created from the Diageo rum revenues, which has not been utilized properly in the past several years, to take care of our recreation fields, like the Lionel Smith Richards Field that is shamefully in disarray. As far as economic is concerned, we have hotels in your district here that are getting EDC benefits, and they should be required to support this community and assure employment for the youth of Smith Bay. Frankly, the area to the east of the Sugar Bay Resort and to the west of the Smith Bay Park, as governor, I will move aggressively so that we could develop a water park in that vacant land as a tourist attraction, as well as for a much needed attraction and place to go and recreation area for the youth of St. Thomas and St. John. That is critical. And as far as litter is concerned and beautification, we should have a convenience center located conveniently in the Smith Bay area so that a lot of the trash that we see on the side of the road would no longer be there. So, these are the things, those are the building blocks for how you achieve vision. It is not sufficient just to have grand vision. That is easy. The day-to-day getting up and doing the work that is required is what has been sorely lacking in this administration. And that is what we propose to fix. We are done with the ceremonial aspects of the government, and we need to work on getting the people's work done. And in that way, you can believe in a better tomorrow. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions and the answers that will be provided. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. I truly appreciate everyone keeping on schedule. You know, that's my thing.
But you're tough.
Yeah, I'm not tough. Little, but Mr. Petrus.
Good evening, everybody. I really want to first thank this Mid-Bay community for holding this forum. This is really a good experience for all of us because a lot of people may not know about the in-depth issues that affects Mid-Bay, and so this is good to expose a lot of people about Mid-Bay. I want to turn to, before I do that, my running mate here, Senator Sanis. He's an awesome individual, awesome human being. And so I want you guys to recognize that this is a man with a soul. Okay. I want to turn to all the candidates right now and tell you guys that yes, I want to be that one standing at the end of August 4th. But if I'm not that person, God determines that I need to go in a different direction. My unwavering support will be for whoever comes out of the Democratic primary. And it's because none of us is ordained for this position. We all put ourselves in this place because we feel that we have something to offer. I am not going to take a dagger and point a finger at any one of these guys here.
That's right.
They are not the people who are destroying our community.
Right.
The person that is destroying our community now sits in government house. That's our target. Having said that, let me introduce you guys to who Allison Petrus is. And I'm passionate. I'm really, really passionate. The things that I get involved in, I do it with an unwavering zeal. I mean, the things that my daughter always say, people run from the fire, I run to the fire. That's the passion, the love that I have for this community. Who am I? I'm that person who grew up in public housing. So you can say I was once considered the least common denominator based on how a lot of people look at people from public housing. I'm now aspiring to be the greatest common denominator in our community. That is a big accomplishment. I want to stand as an example to all those kids in public housing that are gangbanging, shooting each other, and feel that there's no other way out because they feel they are shut out from society. I want to stand as an example to my two daughters that things are not the most important things that I want to leave with them, but I want to leave with them humanity, the passion for humanity. I want to leave with them lessons. The greatest lessons is how they care for their brothers and sisters. Me being in this race, and the things that I have come up with, that Senator Sanis and I have come up with, are all based on my experiences. The things that really vex me, the things that upset me, the things that really tormented me over the years, that I had to prepare myself for when that opportunity arises to take advantage of it. Our kids who are living with the least common denominator amongst us shouldn't have to kick down doors. I am kicking the doors down for them. I am leading and blazing the trail for them. And so today I stand before you. I am not one of those individuals who will tell you about the great pie in the sky and what have you. You are going to see my works based on the evidence that I leave behind. That's me. Everything that I do. And so when we elect individuals, ask yourself, what have they done in our community? What have they done to improve the lives of the people that are amongst them? And so that's the legacy that I want to leave. That's the memory that I want to leave with my children, that they had a father that made a difference in this community. And making a difference, let's start off with the programs that I have started and were responsible for. Graffiti Street. A lot of kids came through our community. A lot of them had never been outside of the Virgin Islands, never experienced or been exposed to different things. And even the one here right behind the camera, he had his start in Graffiti Street too, so he's still behind the camera. So I wanted our kids to have that experience, to be able to travel abroad, expose them to things that they were never thinking that they could be exposed to let them know that there is a world beyond these shores. And yes, we were successful at that. We won national awards that basically outdid some of the big budget programs like BET Teen Summit. I also was co-founder of Positive Tree, which is a nonprofit organization that mentored young people. That was also a big accomplishment because we brought kids from St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, and we took them to Lamshore Bay. We had them mentored, matched up with adult professionals in the community. We made a difference in those kids' lives. Besides those two organizations, I also started Zero Tolerance Basketball that's still going on to this day. So any of your kids that have played basketball, more than likely to play in Zero Tolerance Basketball. So I have done things in this community that have made a difference in children's life. Today, my wife and I, we decided when I made 50, that we were going to make a contribution annually of $10,000 to kids going to the University of the Virgin Islands to improve their lives, because there is no quick path to success. Education, as I learned, was the only equalizer, was the only instrument that I could use to get out of public housing. And education is what I am today. It represents who I am today. And I believe so strongly in it. And so when we started our businesses, one of the things that we said when we started our first business, my wife and I, we are strong believers, but I don't think there's anybody stronger than her in terms of her belief. And one of the things that we said, Lord, if you bless us, we will be a blessing to those amongst us. To this day, we continue to do so. And I had no interest in getting back into politics. This was not my passion. This was not the thing that woke me up every 4 o'clock in the morning to think about, oh gosh, about the next election. Oh gosh, about how I can maneuver and become a candidate. I had no such idea. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about the next business opportunity whereby I can employ those people that other people say are unemployable. That's what I was thinking about. And so I find myself in this position because I found and I realized that I could no longer sit and stand on the sideline. Because you know what? I had to come to that acceptance, and it's not arrogance, that God has blessed me with a lot. Coming from a little bit, He has now blessed me to a lot. And so I have to know, to whom much is given, much in return is expected. And I have to get off the sideline to be a part of this process. Because I am a doer. I don't like long discussions. I want to just get it done. That's me. So many people will tell, let me get into my issues. Let me get into my issues. That's the passion that I have. I just keep going on and on because it's a passion. My wife is saying wrap it up. Top tier issue, my 5 top tier issue is about economic development. Why economic development is so important? Because right now our government is operating on 2 to 4 days of cash on hand. This is important because the governor will let you to believe that all the federal monies that are coming in can be used in our general fund. Nothing tal goes so. It cannot be used in our general fund. That's why in August of last year we had 3 days of cash flow. In December of last year we had 2 days of cash flow, and now we have 2 to 4 days of cash flow. Our picture isn't getting any better, and we have 2 to 4 days of cash flow in spite of the fact that we got some monies from FEMA to pay operating expenses. So how do we fix that? We have to grow the economy. We have to create business opportunities. One of the bills that I was responsible for is the enterprise zone. Smith Bay can qualify to be an enterprise zone whereby businesses or small businesses developed in Smith Bay can qualify for a 5-year tax exemption. That was one of the bills that was a prime sponsor of. And so that's one of the things that I think needs to be done here. Our education system, education is so important. How my mind switches to execution, get it done. I think about the how. So how we need to fix our teacher shortage. Okay, we have a teacher shortage right now. We have the University of Virginia has a teacher education program. What we need to do, what we will be doing, is creating almost a feeder program or academy in the 11th and 12th grade, similar to ROTC, that's now a feeder program for the military. You will do that for an education program. Any kids interested in going to the education, we will recruit them, will get a free tuition education. What that does, a free tuition education with the caveat of you must spend 5 years working, giving back to this community in education. That will increase the number of teachers in our system. Once again, when there's a problem, I just don't talk about it. My mind switched to how are we going to fix it. And so that's how we will fix that. Athletics is so important. We have a whole initiative called Save the Children Initiative. The education part is part of it, but also the recreational part is the other part of it. We should be having sports, and we will have sports all year round. Not just the Little League Baseball and everything is finished. Our kids need to be engaged. Why? That's prevention. That's crime prevention. And something's wrong with your clock. So let me wrap up by saying, okay, I really appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to being the next governor of these Virgin Islands. But once again, if I am not the next governor of these Virgin Islands, without hesitation, I am not ordained to be that. God did not say, okay, you're going to be the next governor of the Virgin Islands, but if he does decide that I am, I tell you, we're going to turn this place around, okay? Thank you, and we're going to do this together as a Democratic team.
Let's give all of our candidates a hand. We're going to go ahead now into our question-answer period. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question. Now, you know at this time right now, it's 8:20, 8:15, 8:16, 8:20, I was right? Okay, I'm right on time. In this time frame that we have, we can only get so many questions out. What I have discussed with the campaign managers, I don't know if they told y'all or not, but any question that I'm unable to get through tonight, you will have the opportunity for the candidate to contact you via email Or, if you would like, after we clear the room, you're more than welcome to pull them to the side after the program is over. But I can only get so many questions in, but I'm definitely going to get in as many as I possibly can. I have the sheets before me, but they are not in any particular order, just as I collected them. All right? So let's get started.
First question is to Mr. Dawson. As governor, how do you plan to eliminate obtrusive violations? For example, the sale and use of illegal substances. I hope I'm saying that word correctly.
Such as
The sale and use of illegal substances.
So, I firmly believe in something called the broken windows theory of policing. And that is, if you enforce the laws against the small infractions, it sends a message. If you were to have a street that is pristine and there's a broken window that you allow to remain that way, it then leads to other things happening. And the broken windows theory suggests that you need to take care of the small infractions. Now, I'll say this, and we're not getting into the debate, or maybe there'll be a question with regards to marijuana, what have you. We know that it's not necessarily enforced. However, if someone is going to be smoking a marijuana cigarette right in front of a police officer, then that sends a wrong message, all right? If one is going to be blasting music out of their car and disturbing a neighborhood, and nothing is done to avoid that situation, or the laws against noise are not enforced, then that leads to perhaps a greater violation, because like children, you give them an inch and they take a mile. That is why it is so important, really, to answer that questioner's question, to enforce the laws that are on the book, from small to big. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with greater issues in terms of criminal justice.
Mr. Petrus, and I keep looking at you, and it's only because you're in my visual, so I wasn't. Okay, Mr. Petrus, what will you do to control noise pollution in ordinance to the law? For example, there is a particular business here that was doing building during the time they shouldn't, quiet time, basically. We have quite a few seniors here, and the noise was just ridiculous. And even if you lived in the hill, you could hear it. So how do you plan to address those businesses, or anyone who continues to do that? Your time starts now.
Yeah, there are laws in the books to deal with these issues, but I think more importantly, we have to look at really in the Smith Bay area, because I have a business in Smith Bay and I know about the issues in Smith Bay. We have to look at creating, in a troubled area like a spot like this, a police substation. I think that will be critical, because that serves as a visual deterrence for a lot of the things that happen in Smith Bay. Smith Bay is a great community. When I look at the individuals who, their participation in the community and the things that they do, how much you guys care for this community, I have not seen this same kind of energy and interest in a lot of community that I go into. And so for that, I think that you guys, the Smith Bay community definitely does need to have a substation here in this community, and a lot of those things will be addressed, because it's just be, walking outside your door, the police officer be doing police community policing, and they would have developed a relationship in the areas, and it's about enforcing those laws.
Now, Mr. Bryan, how will you address and correct loitering and littering?
I think the littering laws in the Virgin Islands need to be updated so that we can really enforce them. So my thing is technology, right? We don't use it enough, or we're not using it enough. To fix most of the crime incidents, including drug dealing, is to simply outfit the hot corners with technology, cameras to monitor the action there, and then you prosecute people based on the evidence that you collected. The feds really are looking for larger fish, while the local government does not have the equipment to deal with it. So making sure that people put trash in the right places is two things: enforcement and education. Making sure that the police know how to enforce the law, as well as the people that we have in the Waste Management Authority. And then teaching us from an early age, it was very effective when tourism was part of our curriculum in the schools, and keeping the place clean and beautification was a part synonymous with Virgin Islands. We had less litter, and we've moved away from that. We've moved so far away now that even people don't even pull to the side when they hear the sirens anymore, because we're not training our people and educating people. We're not teaching them and understanding. We're assuming that they already know. So moving forward, a strong education system to start policing ourselves, so we don't have as much litter in the Virgin Islands, and it's a beautiful place people want to come to see.
Going back to Mr. Bryan, what will be your plans for the Smith Bay community? Your time starts now.
One thing I like about Smith Bay is that it is an involved community. I think what needs to happen is that the Smith Bay community is to take a larger piece of the tourism pie. This is actually the roadway to one of our most beautiful beaches in the Virgin Islands, Cookie Point, and we don't take care of it like that. There's a lot that can be done in terms of the trash control, the drugs and the loitering control. If nobody's hanging out in the corner, nobody can get shot in the corner. So putting these young people to work in Smith Bay to do things like keep the park grass cut and make sure that our fields look like major league fields, not like nobody takes care of them. Putting them to work as entrepreneurs, taking advantage of the tourists, at least during the peak season, at least 1 million tourists ride past those young men every year. We need to put them to work in terms of making some of that money. People come from all over the place and make money, but we encourage all our people to go work for the government. It's time to show them how to look at the 1 million or 1.5 million tourists that pass them and see opportunity and put those people to work. And I think that is one of the things I would love to do for Smith Bay. I really like to compliment Angel, I think this is who said about the EDC participation in their community. But the problem as EDC chair for 8 years, I saw, is the right avenue in order to channel that money. By the government taking priority and saying, Smith Bay Park is a priority, Cookie Point is a priority, and we want you to direct the money there. Rather than 6,000 people asking every day for money and everybody getting $1, the money will be concentrated to fixed places, specifically like Smith Bay.
Mr. Dawson, what is your plan for the elderly after they retire?
Well, first of all, to ensure that they can retire, given the status of the government employees retirement system. And I'm happy for this opportunity because, frankly, having served on the Pension Reform Task Force, submitting a report and recommendations and legislation some 5 years ago, we have 5 years less time to fix the issue now. And the system is forecasted to be out of liquid resources, out of money, in 2022, 2023. We've gotten to the point where we have got to not only have Tier 1 and Tier 2, but essentially we're going to need to have almost 2 parallel systems, one of which is going to be phased out over time as the Tier 1 employees retire and advance in age and are no longer receiving benefits. And that needs to continue to be the defined benefit plan that is in place presently, because a retirement annuity is a pledge, a sacred pledge to the people that have worked 20 and 30 years for the retirement. For the younger employees in Tier 2, we're going to have something more akin to a defined contribution plan, similar to a 401k plan in the private sector, which has very distinct advantages as well. Unlike our parents and their parents, many young people do not expect to work for the same employer for their entire career. So portability of the retirement plan, which they get from a defined contribution plan, is really very critical and important to younger employees joining the government. And so I'm going to ensure that the retirees can retire. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, continuing on. Mr. Petrus, you now have your time in 2 minutes to say what else that you weren't able to list, or what are your plans for the Smith Bay community?
As many people might know, that we have a business in Smith Bay, and we employ people in Smith Bay. We employ probably about 12 individuals in Smith Bay. and we employ people that a lot of people wouldn't employ. And so we take pride in saying that. And so what the things that have to be done in Smith Bay is, one, public safety as a major issue in Smith Bay. One of the things that I did when I opened the business is that we put cameras in place, and as one of the agreements, we place the cameras, I guess the view of the cameras are outward into the streets and different places, and we would hope a lot of other businesses, oh yes, I like looking at you, but I would hope a lot of other businesses would do the same thing too, so we would encourage that. A police substation is one of the things that I think needs to be had in Smith Bay. That is very important about neighborhood policing. It's not just about putting police officers in a car and they're driving around, and when something happens, that's not prevention. But neighborhood policing is about police officers getting into the community, knowing the individuals in the community that might be causing different issues in the community, and trying to head them off before they occur. Enterprise Zone, one of the legislation that I was involved with as the prime sponsor back in 1999, it's been that long. The Enterprise Zone.
It'll come back to you. You have another question that's going to be the same thing. Trust, you're going to definitely have another question. I see one now that's asking you the same question. So don't worry, we're coming back to you. We're going to get it all out. All right, thank you. Going back to Mr. Bryan. While practicing, will you implement more employment opportunities for seniors and the youth?
So I'm proud to say that as commissioner, well, Governor Mapp promised 1,000 jobs in the first year. I did 1,000 jobs in 3 months. There is never a commissioner of the Virgin Islands Labor Department that has employed more people in one summer than I have. And historically, in total, there hasn't been any that has employed. So summer jobs is not only about kids making money. The most important thing is that students are getting experience. We also ran the CSEP program, which is where we put our seniors to work in different parts of this community. But one thing I don't think people are acknowledging is our seniors look different now, right? Because I'm sure Ali is almost 60, right? It's very real, and he is very vibrant. He runs every day. We need to start to plan for our seniors a little differently. Not that we're going to lock them away, but we're going to keep them active. One of the things that is influencing our kids really bad now is that they don't have contact with the seniors. Grandmothers are 50, 45 now. So we really need to get our seniors active in our schools, in our after-school programs. My goal is to have year-round school for those students that are not performing for reading and math. So not only that we acknowledge that in third grade they don't read to level, we do something about it. And I think our seniors can play a big role in doing that. Because my grandmother was my first teacher. She taught me the Lord's Prayer, how to do my ABCs and how to add. And we need to get back to, we got a lot of retired teachers that really wouldn't mind picking up the extra bucks, and helping our students get back to it. Oh, that's the bell.
Yes. Thank you very much. Going back to Mr. Dawson, what are your plans for our schools and hospitals?
The first plan, frankly, is to look very closely at the consolidation of the Wanui Hospital and the Roy Lester Schneider Hospital, Myra Keating Clinic on St. John, okay? I find that having two distinct districts as we do now do not provide the opportunity for purchasing in large volumes for all of the hospitals. Having every one of the hospitals purchased separately is simply not cost efficient. They're duplicating the technology at Wanui and Roy Schneider, and there's no need for that either. Another important consideration, frankly, is the medical school at the University of the Virgin Islands, which I was very happy as a banker to be a part of providing the financing for. That is a critically important program to the Virgin Islands. It would be the only English-speaking accredited school in the Caribbean, and it is important that that program get off of the ground because it also ties in with the technological aspects of my 3 T's, tourism, technology, and trade. And if we do so, we're going to ensure that we not only assist our local seniors and the population in general, but that we are able to attract retirees from throughout the United States and the world, frankly, that would like to retire to the Virgin Islands. So it's an economic initiative as well. If you're going to retire to a place, one of the first questions you ask is, does it have adequate health care? Because if something were to happen, would I be able to get health care? So by addressing our hospitals, we also address our economy. And that 2 minutes just flies way too quickly.
I know it flies quickly, and the reason why we kind of did it that way, so I can explain to you, because we wanted to get as much of an exact, straight to the point answer as possible. It's sometimes very hard because we have so many questions that we're trying to get it in, and but we want to be able to get in and say what you got to say so we can get it out. So thank you for your so patient. Mr. Petrus, back to you. As you can see, there are very few sidewalks in Smith Bay. What are your plans to create new sidewalks for our children to be safe and our residents?
Before I answer the question, let me also mention as it relates to hospitals, under our administration, we will not tear down the existing hospitals. That will be done, it will be rebuilt from the inside out.
I agree. I agree.
In terms of sidewalks, in terms of sidewalks, the highway programs, the highway monies, sidewalks are things that I think needs to be a part of every community. And so how can we make sidewalks a part of the community? Because a lot of communities have where the houses are actually built on the road based on the old time construction. So in a lot of places, that will not be possible. Where, for instance, on St. Croix, there's a lot of space where that can be possible. And so wherever possible, I think we need to do that. The other thing that as an extension of the sidewalks, really improving the quality of life for our community, is about creating parks. Parks are very important in improving the lives, the quality of lives for our community. And in so many instances, so many construction, I see where we missed the mark, where we could have incorporated parks into the development. Because of my construction experience, my eye for these kind of things, this is how we are going to move in terms of creating parks, creating sidewalks, because the net effect, we want to create a better quality of life for our community. Not just when you go to the States you can experience these things. I want to see us experience them here because we deserve better. We deserve better than what we have right now. Okay? We are great people. I'm here waiting to hear, anticipating.
You're in time.
Okay, good. Thanks.
You're in time, thank you. There you go. Okay, going back to Mr. Bryan. How will you solve the garbage situation for transport? If I'm asking the question correctly.
Well, I live in Smith Bay and I wrote it. We have garbage piled up all over the place. We have to either go to Red Hook or Rappoon Hill. We have no place to put our garbage so it can be taken. So if you're a senior, you don't have a car, where's all this garbage going? It's dumping on the side of the road, it's somebody's house, it's horrible.
Okay, Ms. Rubin. I love her passion.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, since the garbage is all over the place, how are we going to be able to move that out of the community? Because it is a lot of garbage in Smith Bay. There's not a lot of places for bins to be placed. At one time, it was in front of the Smith Bay ballpark. It was horrible. It was an eyesore. Once we moved it down the road, it's still, now it's garbage over there. It would overflow and people would continue. We have seniors who may not have cars. How are they going to get their garbage from coming down from a hill or wherever the case may be? How will you plan to solve that? Your time starts now.
The strange thing in the Virgin Islands is as high as our property tax get, we don't get the services that are connected with them. We keep paying more and more. So one of the things that I would like to make sure is that our homeowners get the services that they get. Most of us don't get sewage. Most of us don't get water. So garbage pickup is the least they could do. And I think think how we do that too is we look at the areas and we say in the more affluent areas, like most people don't know in St. Croix, you pay for your garbage to be picked up. So in the more affluent areas, we start to let people subscribe to a service where they actually pay for garbage pickup. And then to the middle class and the people who cannot afford for that garbage to be picked up, we have city service that picks up that garbage. On a whole, I think that we generate way too much garbage. I remember when the dump was flat. Yes, I'm that old. And we have to look at how we generate this garbage. I grew up in St. Thomas. We had one little garbage bag a week. Now you throw out the garbage every day. So we need to figure out ways of conserving, because we're a small island. Those plastic water bottles, we banned plastic bags, and we still have 6,000 of these being drank every day. It doesn't make sense. Consistent policy that allows us to collect our taxes and put them back into the communities that are actually paying them to pick up the garbage, provide public water, and also to make sure that the cars and the sidewalks, as the last question was, are implemented, are important. The reason that's not happening now is because we don't have enough taxpayers making enough money. What we're talking about are symptoms of a society that has not moved over time. A government that has stagnant wages, a private sector that can't compete with the government wages, and an overall economy that's suffering on so many different facets. If we move the people, we move the taxes, and then we're able to provide the services that you deserve. Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Going back to Mr. Dawson. As you know, that the island is totally kind of ravished. Some of the parts are still ravished. Why are we so slow on cleaning up this island, and how will you go about cleaning up Smith Bay, especially since it's a tourist route?
Thank you so much for that question, because it is one that I think Albert was listening earlier when I spoke about having the convenience centers for garbage disposal, which we need to have in this community, this Smith Bay community. We also need to have, frankly, community groups such as the Smith Bay Community Action Foundation more involved directly with government. And as governor, I would ensure that my administrator works on a regular basis with groups such as this, to the point where, you're always going to have litter and trash no matter what you do. Look at Disney World as an example. You don't find a gum wrapper in Disney World. Does that mean that people didn't drop a gum wrapper? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that as soon as it's dropped, somebody's coming along to pick it up. So much so that in our communities, and we're speaking about Smith Bay, let us work with the Smith Bay group such as this to work with the private haulers that are going to be working and cleaning your streets on a daily basis, so that you can ensure that that work is done to your satisfaction. This is a way of empowering the citizens of a community to ensure that it is being done to their satisfaction. And frankly, I also said, and I see that Albert was listening, that we need to dedicate the taxes, particularly the real property taxes collected in an area, to services in that area, because you ought to get the services that you're paying for. And real property taxes ought to be allocated to things such as street signs and picking up the garbage. Those are the basics that government ought to be providing and are not providing presently.
Mr. Petrus, what are your plans for the Smith Bay ballpark?
Actually, on my list of things that needs to be done in Smith Bay, the ballpark is actually one of them. I grew up playing sports. Sports was everything for me. I was a sports fanatic. My mother couldn't afford to send me to college. I went on a basketball scholarship. That's how I got to school. And so sport is so very dear to me, because that creates an outlet for a lot of kids. It creates an avenue for them to be able to express themselves in ways that we would not even imagine. And so it irks me when I see them taking our field in Charlton Valley High School and putting these schools modulars on the ballpark. So in Smith Bay, first of all, it is not a difficult thing to clean that ballpark. Keep it clean. It is not difficult. What we have is a government that's not working for the people. A government that's not responsive to the needs of the people. That ballpark should be clean. The grass should be cut. The basketball court should be fixed. We should deal with the drainage problem because Smith Bay has a flooding problem. And so the drainage issue there should be dealt with. They dealt with the drainage problem because it affected the hotel. Why couldn't the drainage problem be dealt with because it affects the kids? And so they don't prioritize our kids. In our administration, that's what we will be doing. Prioritizing our kids because they're important. You look at our population, we have an aging population. We look at the gaps in terms of what the census would tell us. We don't have a lot of young people in our community because when they grow up, when they graduate from high school, they leave here never to return because they don't feel that this community has done anything for them. And so we have to start changing that right now. And so one of the things that we will do, I am a sport fanatic. Athletics will be king because that's what will keep our kids engaged.
Going back to Mr. Dawson, we're doing pretty good. I'm almost through most of the questions, so we're doing very good. Going back to Mr. Dawson, and I'm addressing the question as the person wrote it. So, would you legalize herbs? I'm just a reader.
So, no, it's not. The difficulty there, and not passing any moral judgments whatsoever, frankly, is that if we were to legalize it locally, the concern remains that marijuana is still classified as, I think, a class 1 narcotic by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau of the United States government. And you have someone in the form of a William Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, that has made every indication that he is not in favor of the states that have legalized marijuana continuing to have it legal, and it still is under federal purview. So if we legalize it, let us please understand that it can be made illegal or the enforcement action by the federal government could come down on you. If you make it legal, I imagine that the question goes to, would we encourage business activity by having retail stores, what have you? The difficulty there is that you cannot deposit your monies from the sale of marijuana in any federally insured financial institution. So it's an economic issue. What do you do with the funds that you generate? And if you go and you spend $100,000, $200,000 to build a retail establishment in January, and then in April the federal government decides that it's going to crack down, you've lost that investment. So if we were to decide to go that way locally, let us please understand all of the ramifications, because the federal government ultimately controls what happens with marijuana and other drugs. But we're speaking specifically about marijuana. Hopefully there will be enough states that will move in a direction where, frankly, if you ask me, the thing that makes sense occurs with regards to marijuana throughout the entire nation. So I hope you can read into what I just said.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bryan, that question is going to come back to you because I have a question that's related to you specifically, but that's not your question for right now. Your question is, what is your rehab plan for prisoners?
I actually toured the Golden Grove facility in St. Croix twice, and I served as a citizen committee. For me, it's a tragic shame when you go there and you see our young men stacked up like hot dogs in fridge. And I can't say it any other way because they're just sitting there doing nothing all day long. I think the first thing that needs to happen is that there needs to be a mandatory GED program for any young man who doesn't have a high school diploma that's sentence. If you complete your GED program, you get out early. There also needs to be more active participation from the government in encouraging young men who have been out of prison for more than 5 years to expunge their records so that they could find places of work. I met a young man the other day, for 20 years ago he came out of jail and he doesn't know that he can vote. I think the other thing is 80 to 75 to 80% of the people that we lock up, and we're the fourth highest incarceration rate in the entire world, the Virgin Islands, have some kind of learning disability or mental disability. We know that these children are this way from time they're in kindergarten. We see them act out in school and we do nothing. We wait till they get out of school and they end up, or sometimes if they get shot, and then we lock them up like animals. It is time for our community to be responsible, to take a proactive action from time these kids enter school, identify the mental illness or the learning disability they have, and make sure that they can become productive adults. And if they are incarcerated, we have to make a path back to society for them, because they're not going anywhere. They're coming right back in our society to sit right back in that corner to get in trouble again. When I was Labor Commissioner, we created a program called YouthNet. And the focus of the program was to create a net, a safety net for all youth, that if you stop going to school, we would find you, identify what your weakness was, and try to get you back on course, back in society. Thank you.
Going back to you, Mr. Petrus. Why are gas stations on St. Thomas allowed to charge $1 per gallon more than on St. Croix? And why is the price in the most repressed community, Bavoni, the highest on the island?
Okay, these two questions will coincide with each other. We actually, meaning at PG Gas, you could say that we have a rehab program for prisoners because we put them to work when they come out of prison. The why gas prices are high, really the difficulty is we live in a free market society, free enterprise. We can't have, prices cannot be controlled because the courts basically frown upon it. It's based on supply and demand. The issue with St. Croix can drive up to their terminal and get their gas, and so there's no additional cost in terms of shipping and what have you. When we purchase gas here in St. Thomas, for the most part, we purchase it from Puerto Rico because it's coming from out of the territory. There's an additional 14 cents a gallon that they don't have to pay in St. Croix that those in St. Thomas have to pay. And in terms of the, I think it's the Bavoni area, I can't tell you what goes into their pricing structure, but everyone have a pricing strategy, their own pricing strategy. One of the things that we pride ourselves in is that we do not artificially inflate our price. As a matter of fact, the price is as low as it is right now simply because we refuse to budge and increase our price, because this is a community that we live in, this is a community we're from. Most people who own gas station don't care about this community. They're not from here, they're not a part of who we are, and so that's why I am actually frowned upon, or we are frowned upon in many instances as those who take a hard stand in terms of when other people look at the increase their prices, we hold the line. After the hurricane, we held the line. Sometimes we lose, and then sometimes we're going to gain, but we are determined that we are not going to take advantage of our community.
Mr. Bryan, what is your stance on legalizing marijuana?
I'm not going to beat around the bush. My stance on legalizing marijuana is everybody in the Virgin Islands who wants to smoke marijuana is smoking marijuana. The recent change in the law is creating a situation where we're creating a demand for a product that's illegal. We're saying you could carry around less than an ounce, right? And not be prosecuted for it. And yet, if there's no supply for marijuana that's legal. So you're actually creating a demand for a product that's illegal. That's entrapment. I think we need to grow up and realize that in the Virgin Islands now, the problem is not the marijuana. The problem is controlling it, and the problem is putting the regulation in place so our kids don't have access to it, but we're way behind in the game. And once again, as a tourism destination, we have missed the boat in being able to take advantage of the medicinal uses that marijuana could bring to our tourists who are getting older and older and older. The Virgin Islands always seems to be hemming and hawing when it comes to taking action. We want to create a purposeful government that knows what it wants to do. The governor cannot legalize marijuana. The Senate has to do it. All they can do is ratify it. I think the the time has come for us to face the fire and realize that marijuana is a large part of our community. We need to start the education from our kids at a young age, keep them away from it, and capitalize on any economic gain that it could bring our tourism product.
Coming down to the last of the questions, and as I separated all the questions before, this is a question that's addressed to all three candidates. What is your plan to address the issue of the mentally ill persons living on the street with no facility available?
That is a very tragic situation that we have here in the Virgin Islands. And recently I did raise the profile of a situation right in the shadow of the Vitima complex here on St. Thomas. Now, we of course do have the Eldra Schulterburn facility here in St. Thomas. There's no facility on St. Croix, and that is a crying shame. There are also plans for a residential facility in the Cantant area that has never gotten off of the ground. We need to realize that any one of us could become mentally ill at any moment. There's no shame involved. I myself have a very close family member that has suffered with mental illness, but with the love of a family and with proper medication, they're able to live a productive life. Not everyone can say that. We need to ensure that we have the proper medical care for those with mental health issues, because it is a mental problem in most cases. And either you have to have the proper psychiatrists who are in a position to prescribe drugs, or the psychologists who will have the necessary behavioral therapies to ensure that the individuals that are afflicted receive the necessary help. But all of this has to be done off of the streets. We cannot have the individuals who are walking our streets harming themselves, harming local residents, and detracting in many instances from our tourism product by being obtrusive, frankly. We've got to give these people the necessary help.
My background, my first job, my first degree is in psychology, and I worked at a psychiatric rehabilitation center in Jacksonville, Florida. And in working there, my experience there showed me the issues with mental illness. And in developing a group home, there are programs where the federal government, if a local person wants to get into that type of business, the federal government, I don't know if the Virgin Islands, and maybe that's something that I will look into, if the program extends to the Virgin Islands, where you can develop a group home, say on the mainland, and you can house people with mental illness or mental challenges in that group home, where they can get the proper medication, the proper medical attention that they need. But in the Virgin Islands here, we do have an issue, and sometimes I was trying to I know my personal experience trying to help someone with mental illness, whereby the system is telling you that you can't, it is their own will and way in terms of when they reach a certain age, that you can't do anything about it because, some of them would prefer to be on the streets and creating the kind of issues that we have. So, but medication, I tell you, is the number one, solution. But a lot of them don't like taking the medication because of how it makes them feel. So it is not a simple solution. It is not by far the easiest thing, but for the grace of God, all of us are here in our right mind, but the pressures can create a situation that takes us from this space, this frame of mind, to another frame of mind where we can be categorized or classified as mentally ill. But it is not an easy solution, simply because these individuals also, the system will tell you, they have rights. And so it frustrates a lot of the family members who are trying to intervene and get them even into the homes when they're not taking the medication, to get them to be able to abide, because the court will tell you, once they're over the age, they can, that's where the challenge is.
The good news is that I'm going to actually answer the question. The second set of good news is that I don't have to know how to do it. It's already been done. We have spent a lot of time in a task force creating a 5-year strategic mental health plan. The problem is that we're not following it. So all we have to do is follow the steps. I took the time to read the plan, and it says everything that we need to do. The final answer, I think, is to create an institution in St. Croix. We have a nice piece of land that used to house the governor's mansion, and we split it into 3 sections. One for the chronically ill, one for people who are having temporary problems, and another piece for transition, so that we're able to transition people between those three programs on the property and avail them to a psychiatrist, somebody who's going to transition them back into the environment, and somebody who can communicate with their family. And in this way, we can take the mentally ill off of the streets of St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, and put them in a nice setting that is relaxing and less stressful, where they can get better. The plan calls for a lot of different things that are not happening in the government right now, but it all links back to money, and without the economics and money, we can't get the plan done. The real solution is to identify that mental health has a wide array of different problems and different ways it can affect people. Not only the people who are walking the streets, but the people who are sitting next to you at work every day that are going through the crisis in their life that we're not paying attention to. If we start a mental health program that really looks at mental health, not crazy people walking the streets, because that's the tip of the iceberg, but from our young people all the way to our elderly, how they interact in their homes, how they're interacting in the streets and in the workplace, and provide the care that is needed. Not like what is going on now with the cancellation of the Virgin Islands Behavioral Services contracts. So right now, the government in St. Croix doesn't even have a psychiatrist to prescribe drugs for those people who are in rehab, and it's creating a huge problem, and a bigger problem is going to be created as time goes on and those people don't get their medication.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give Mr. Bryan, Mr. Dawson, and Mr. Petrus. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much for attending. Good luck to all of you. I look forward to meeting with the candidates for lieutenant governors as they have theirs. For you all that are in the audience, thank you so much for coming.